My husband had issues with adult when it hit the fire and it was not fun for him.
Okay. Well, I am not paying attention because I one time
also
I knew it was fun, but I entered it in third degree. Yes. On the right. Your voice is that in my Oh, you don't need to give me one of those.
Thanks, Lynn. You're welcome. Never made it.
You drink the black, right?
Not in that one. That one's a little different. I'm
Still alone. Are you? I haven't been here yet. This looks like enough. It's something that is.
So when I made that,
Once it's finished.
Yeah.
And you're not. I just wanted to say it.
you are sitting by a window when you're frigid. You are sitting by a window.
Come from the 70s.
Yeah, just yeah, exactly.
I know.
Any charter reviews in here?
I know.
So how you said included if it's name like John Jenkins or something.
I really like some of
Wait a minute.
I need to find out who makes it. When I was in college, my buddies made those badges.
Seriously?
I'm the man.
Oh yeah, they can share.
I have a Grayson ID with Bill Higdon on it.
Bill Higdon.
Yeah, because my buddy was the one that made the IDs.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's
No,
how
he passed away not too long ago.
Yeah, you want do not disturb here? You got your watch taken care of?
Been that way all week.
Oh, man, that's my guy. All right. It is 3:01 p.m. on April 26, 2023. We are in the Independence Utility Center. I'm going to call to order the Audit and Finance meeting. Present are myself, Dan Hobart, committee members Jared Fears and John Perkins in his Royals uniform today. Thank you, John. We've got City Manager Zach Walker, Finance Director Cindy Gray, members of her staff, and anybody you'd like to announce? Adam Norris. I thought I saw him. Okay. PFM representatives here, but he'll come later. Okay, so everybody's here that we need to be here. Okay, minutes, gentlemen. Have you guys had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting on January 25, 2023?
I reviewed the minutes and I liked them, and I'll make a motion we approve them.
Second. Okay, no additions or changes? Okay, motion carries. The minutes are approved. I don't see anything listed under carryover business. I know we're going to take PFM out of order, but we've got so little on the agenda, we'll just cruise through this. The management analyst items, we've got we need to get that position listed. Maybe Mr. Walker or Mr. Norris, the management analyst position. We had some informal talks about getting this position listed, but changing the title. Can we do that? Would you give us an update?
Yes, at any time that the committee and or the council's ready for that to be posted, we can do so. I believe what you're referring to, Mr. Chairman, is the name of that position can be a little bit misleading within local government profession. In today's nomenclature, management analyst often refers to an entry-level position within a city manager's office for aspiring city manager types, whereas the position that I believe this council is trying to fill is more commonly referred to as internal auditor. So our charter does refer to it as management analyst, but I think we've discussed this with the city attorney, for purposes of hiring, we can advertise it with that and potentially draw a broader pool of applicants and those with a more traditional audit background.
Let me ask you real quick, for procedural purposes, is it okay if our committee gives you an okay to list this position using the same salary requirements that we had for Mr. Green the last time we posted this?
The short answer is yes. I would be comfortable with that. Longer answer, I'm comfortable with that because the ordinance that lays out more detail around the management analyst duties and responsibilities specifically refers to its engagement and interaction with the Audit and Finance Committee. So I think you all giving that direction would be appropriate. Of course, then knowing that the ultimate hiring will occur as a body, the full council.
Mr. Fierce?
If we were to post that as internal auditor and in parentheses city management analyst, would that be sufficient to attract the kind of folks we want, or does that confuse the issue? Because I'm concerned that we have that in our charter, and I don't want to go foul of that. I know you kind of said we don't have.
Yeah, I think we could utilize that as a working title to still make certain that whoever takes that position, doesn't feel misled. Once they're brought in the interview process, we could certainly let them know the uniqueness with our charter and the titling. But I really do think that working title of internal auditor or something similar to that would help the council attract a broader candidate pool.
You want a motion to that effect?
Any questions, council member?
No questions.
Please.
Make a motion, we proceed with posting that post haste.
Second.
All right. All vote in favor of that. So motion carries. Mr. Walker, would you and your staff please get that done and get that position posted as an internal auditor position, please?
We're happy to do so.
Sure appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Gray. Sorry to keep you waiting on PFM, but it was just a few minutes, so hopefully that's all right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick Kenny with PFM Asset Management. I'm here with another Gray Lepley from our team in Harrisburg. She's with our portfolio strategy group. She's a portfolio strategist with PFM Asset Management. We're going to go through the portfolio today. Gray spoke last time, on video call. We happened to be in town for another conference earlier this morning, so we're happy to have here today to go over the portfolio. A little bit of econ notes that we went over last time. Some comments about the interest rate environment, the inflationary environment, jobs, all sorts of stuff. So happy to have Gray here. She's going to give a brief presentation. Questions during is fine, or if you want to take them to the end, either way is fine. But please welcome Gray Lepley to present. Thank you.
Hi everyone, nice to be with you in person. So we do have printout copies. The one thing I will note is that there are no, when I was going through, I noticed that there are no page numbers. So I apologize for that. So I am going to steer you around with the virtual option here. A few things to start out. Really, when we're looking at the economy, and Nick heard me say this earlier today, but there's a few things. Unemployment is extremely low, right? We've seen that when we're looking for posting positions, for instance, and not getting very many people to actually apply. That's something that has been a theme across the country for sure. Inflation continues to be much too high, currently at 5% versus what the Fed is targeting, which is 2%. That's down from where it had been in June of last year, which was 9.1%. So we're making some headway, definitely getting inflation under control, but still not back to where we'd like it to be. And then as a result of that inflation fighting stance the Fed has taken, Fed policy is continuing to tighten. So we've seen the Fed raise rates substantially since March of last year as a result of trying to get inflation under control. And we expect them to increase rates at their upcoming meeting, which is next week, by 25 basis points or 0.25%. And then the last thing we have on here is about the fact that we saw a ton of volatility in March as a result of the banking crisis that occurred. I'm not going to go too much into depth with that. This chart, if you want to look at this in more depth, this will give you an idea as to what the market response was during that period of time. The red and the green is showing where the 2-year Treasury moved during that period of time. And as you can see, there was a lot on the right-hand side in that March area. So the 2-year Treasury did fall substantially. The 2 year is a good proxy for your portfolio, for your core portfolio, because it's invested in that 0 to 5 year space. This also goes into more volatility. Again, we'll just skip over that, but you can look at that at your leisure. So what is expected to happen as we move forward with the Fed, and what's expected in terms of overnight rates? So when you're looking at different options for investing monies, there's short-term funds that are available, right? And those are at extremely high levels because the Fed has raised rates so much. What we're showing here are a few different pieces of information. March 31st line is that dark blue line that's shown. That's basically saying where is the market expecting interest rates to go over the next few years. And you can see it's much lower than the dotted blue line, which is as of February 28th. Why is that? It's because of the banking turmoil. So essentially, the banking turmoil has meant that credit conditions are going to tighten. The Fed is not going to have to do as much work as they had originally anticipated that they would have to do. And because of that, they're not going to continue raising rates as much as was originally anticipated. This is a Fed dot plot. This essentially shows where the Fed is expecting interest rates will be over the next few years. Again, you can see that a downward trajectory is expected with the long-term rate somewhere around 2.5%. But for the end of 2023, that first cluster of dots is between 5 and 5.25%. So they're expecting to raise rates, as I mentioned, one more time, and then likely will keep interest rates at that level for the balance of the year. In terms of other expectations by the Fed updates these projections that are shown here basically every other meeting. So the last time we received these projections was in December. Now we see March projections in the darker colors. The only thing to really point out here is that there's an expectation for GDP or economic growth to be slower than originally anticipated in 2023 and 2024. If you can see those two bars are significantly lower than what they had been in December. Unemployment, I told you, is at 3.5%, but they're projecting that by the end of 2023, it's going to be 4.5%. So we're probably going to see some softening in the labor market. Have we seen that yet in earnest? Not really. We've seen some headlines of people losing their jobs or layoffs happening, but that hasn't been a systemic situation at this point. But with the fact that they're continuing to raise rates, the expectation is that unemployment will have to go up a little bit to counter that. Inflation in the bottom left-hand corner is expected to remain high for the near term. The Fed's long-term target is 2%. So again, we're at 5% right now. They expect that even by 2025, we're still not going to be back all the way down to 2%, just with the way inflation has continued to run so hot. So what has that meant for interest rates? What has that meant for your portfolio? What we're showing here is the yield curve, which goes all the way out to 30 years. We're obviously not investing out to 30 years in your portfolio. We're only investing out to 5 years in the core portfolio. But it's important to see what the interest rate moves have been since December, which is in the dotted blue, and then the solid blue, which is in March. So you see in the front end of the curve, so the very short-term funds have gone up, those yields have gone up. So when you're looking at MOSIP, for instance, which is your liquidity vehicle that you use with us, that has gone up. I think the rate is currently 478, 479, something like that. So very high. If you look at what happened in the 1 to 5 year space, however, you can see interest rates fell over this period of time. That has actually resulted in positive market value returns. So when interest rates fall, market values actually go up and vice versa. And so what you're going to see from performance for this quarter is positive performance. So we're really excited about that. We've seen a lot of negative numbers over the past year or so as interest rates have been moving up. So we're excited to see some positive numbers. The rest of this, again, I'm going to skip over because I don't think it's necessarily something we need to discuss. But if anyone has any questions about the economy before we actually move into the portfolio, I'm happy to answer those now, or we can wait until the end. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. With the increase of interest rates, what is the construction loan rates? How will that fluctuate or take a big difference?
You mean bond issuance?
No,
Bond
construction
issuance side?
loans.
Oh, construction loans in general.
Yeah.
So what we've seen is that those have continued to move up, but we have seen some wavering over the past, few months where they've actually come down to a certain extent, not substantially, but similar to mortgage rates. Those have also done the same type of thing, right? They went up to 6.5%, almost 7%. They've come down to, right over 6%. Same type of situation. So, as I mentioned, with the banking crisis that's tightened credit conditions, that's one of the ways that it's tightened credit conditions, for sure.
How about the bonding that you were getting ready to explain?
So, I am not a financial advisor, so I have to put that out there. I'm not on the bond issuance side, I'm on the investment side. What we have seen is that generally, most municipalities have been able to issue at pretty good levels versus treasuries. So again, if you look back at this page, treasury yields are still at basically 10-year highs. So you're still having pretty high interest rates in general. However, in terms of where you are versus treasuries, there's not too much of a spread, meaning that it's pretty good level. And we're seeing a lot of demand for those types of securities. So when we actually go out to try to purchase municipal securities, there's a ton of demand. They're typically oversubscribed. So for instance, if they issue 10 million, you'll see 100 million in orders come in. So everyone only gets 10% of what they actually asked for.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions?
I do. It's a really stupid question.
Okay.
And probably low level. No, it's not even worthy of that. Savings accounts. I've signed up for the one on my Apple phone.
Uh-huh.
They started savings account through Goldman Sachs.
Yes.
But the interest rate is like 4.1%.
Mm-hmm.
So is that just directly tied to this increased interest rate? How do they offer such a high?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. So they can borrow these banks. So I'm assuming it's Marcus. Is that what it is?
Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs. Okay. So Goldman Sachs, all of the different banks that are out there are able to borrow money from the Fed at these overnight rates that are between 4.75 and 5%. And they loan to each other at that level. So you're actually getting a 4.1%, which is fantastic in terms of where we've been over the past 10 years, right? Which is basically nothing. But you're not getting the 4.75% that they are able to borrow money at. So you're taking a little bit of a haircut, and that's essentially how that works. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a different environment than where we were a year ago. All right, so let's go into the portfolio. This is an account summary, goes through how much is in the liquid pool, which is MOSIP, how much is in the managed account, so a total of $111.5 million. The sector allocations on the top right-hand side, so you can see most of it's invested in U.S. Treasuries, a very large amount also in federal agencies. Those are Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Federal Home Loan Bank, names like that. And then at the bottom, you're seeing the maturity distribution, which is heavily weighted to the 0 to 1 year space. And I'm actually going to forward a few slides, if it works, and show you. Okay, well, maybe I won't forward a few slides. To give you an idea as to where this is being invested and how it's being utilized, if you look at the right-hand side of the analytics, the yield at market on the portfolio, so if we were to recreate this entire portfolio today, or actually as of March 31st, it would have a yield of 4.25. Because it's been invested over time, you have some portfolio holdings that were invested at much lower yields because that's the interest rate environment that we were in. And so we have the yield at cost at 143. Keep an eye on that 143 just generally as we move forward into the next quarter and quarter after that, because that's going to go up pretty substantially as we continue to see securities roll off from those low yields and move into higher yielding securities.
Can you define yield on cost one more time?
Sure. So the yield at cost is where a security was purchased. So if we purchased it in 2020 when rates were near zero, the yield on that security may have been 0.25%. Now that same security might be yielding a 4.5%. So that's why there's that dichotomy, that difference between the two. Now, I'm not sure what's going on with the presentation.
Yeah.
Failed to load.
We can revert to paper if that's easiest.
Sure.
Okay, let's revert to paper. Okay, so if we look at tab 3, I'll show you on, again, unfortunately there are no page numbers. Tab 3, this is a similar page that shows a similar breakout as to what we saw in the previous slide that we were looking at. You can see at the top, again, the market value, how much is actually in the pool, how much is in accrued interest, the actual market, the managed account subtotal. The portfolio effective duration is at 1.94 versus the benchmark of 2.5. That's a pretty significant difference. And the reason behind that is because we've allowed securities to roll into the front, into that 0 to 1 year space. Oh, now it's working. The magic of technology. Okay. No worries. All right. Okay. So you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner that duration distribution, there's a significant portion in that 0 to 1 year space versus the benchmark. So that blue bar versus the benchmark, which is in gray. That is something that we're going to continue to reallocate further out the curve as maturities come in. This past quarter, we had 2 different security maturities, and we were able to purchase 2 securities out to the 4 to 5 year space at yields of 3.75 or so. So we're excited about that. Again, that's going to be beneficial to adding yield to the portfolio over time and absolutely add a lot of income over time as well. Here are the issuer diversification. So again, treasuries make up the bulk of the portfolio. Federal agencies, we've got Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Federal Home Loan Banks, and Federal Farm Credit Banks as well. We try to keep that as diverse as possible, but of course, those are extremely highly rated, essentially backed by the U.S. government as well. This shows over time how the portfolio has changed. There's not a lot to say here, to be honest with you, in terms of overall allocation since December. So you can see where we were December of 22, March of 23. The only change really is that there's a little bit more in MOSIP, in the local government investment pool, of 2.3%. That's strategic, and that's because of the fact that we're seeing such a high yield in those securities in the MOSIP right now that really you can't beat, to be honest with you, when we're looking out at other investments. So we're keeping a certain amount in that area until we decide that there's better opportunities elsewhere. This is portfolio activity over the past 12 months. You can see there was a little bit in federal agencies that we added. So the blue is purchases, the gray are sales or maturities, primarily maturities out of the portfolio. We did purchase a little bit of federal agencies, but the one thing I want to point out here is that there's a lot more that happened in treasuries. And that's because federal agencies have been very expensive, and there hasn't been a lot of added value to purchasing federal agencies over treasuries. So in that situation, when there's not a lot of extra value, we default to treasuries because, again, they are backed by the U.S. government. Here's portfolio performance. I mentioned that it was positive for the quarter. At the bottom, if you look at market value basis earnings, that interest earned amount there, $406,000, that's going to continue to move up as we move forward because we're investing in higher yields in these securities. The change in market value is because of that chart that I showed you at the beginning where interest rates had fallen over the quarter. With that move in interest rates, that means that the market value went up. So the total dollar return for the quarter is $1.79 million. Over the past 1 year, actually since inception, total dollar return $6.3 million. If we look down at the bottom, you'll see there's a difference between the portfolio and the benchmark. And this is, again, because of the fact that we are very short of the benchmark. That duration is very short of the benchmark. So we weren't able to take as much advantage as the benchmark was of that fall in rates. However, if you look back over time, you can see that over the past year, we've outperformed the benchmark handily, and back to since inception, that there's been some substantial outperformance as well. This is just performance on a sector by sector basis. I'm not going to go into that, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And then finally, accrual basis earnings. Again, you'll see that interest earned amount, the same thing, $406,000 there. And then if you go back to since inception, that amount is $10 million. Again, as we're investing at these higher and higher interest rates, that $406,000 is going to go up pretty substantially on a quarter-over-quarter basis. Again, since inception, $10.8 million in total earnings, all at realized gains, as you can see across the board. Change in amortized cost is also included there. The rest of this goes into actual holdings. I'm not going to go through every single slide. I'm actually not going to go through any of these slides, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any about the portfolio itself. Strategy.
When was inception?
Inception, I believe, was, let me look. Yes, 2016, September 30th of 2016. Any other questions? Well, if anything comes up, obviously you know how to get in touch with us. So, absolutely, thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, as always. Sure appreciate this. Yeah, no kidding. Thanks, Ms. Gray, for having them come in person at PFM. We sure appreciate you folks coming. We didn't used to do this, and even if we don't understand it all, folks that watch sometimes do, or at least they prompt us with better questions. So it's really important, and we sure appreciate it. So thank you very, very much. Thanks a lot. Okay, gentlemen, next up is our elected official budget. And I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at this. I asked Ms. Gray to put these items on here. Part of what we've been talking about doing was combining all of the departments that fall under the council purview into one budget. Prior to, well, maybe it'd be better to have Mr. Walker or explain how this used to work, because he probably actually has a better idea than I do, or better, more accurate explanation.
Certainly. So at present and in years past, the city budget has reflected a mayor's budget, a city council office budget, a city clerk division budget, and the management analyst division budget. Now, each of those ultimately are under the kind of combined with the city council as a whole, as you said, under the purview, but they've been accounted for in the city's budget and accounting system as different, what we call cost centers or divisions within the budget.
Well, that's fairly simple, fellas. My thought was, certainly as committee members, I thought I asked Ms. Gray to include these on here. I thought I'd get your sort of input. My idea was that it might be smart for us to start taking control of our budget and the budget items under our purview. As Mr. Walker has pointed out recently in council meetings, and as we're going to find out on May 9th and going forward when we approve the budget, we are under increasing budget strain in the city. And in years past, the way it's worked from my understanding, of course I've been here for a few years, the management analyst sort of puts together some of these budgets, or the city clerk puts her budget, and the mayor's office, there's all these separate parts, and there's no oversight. And I thought it would be beneficial and responsible for this committee to take some ownership of these budgets, to eventually combine them into one budget. They can still be of course, organized into the different departments, but for us to take some ownership, for us to be able to set budgets and decide items, and then of course have the full council approve them ultimately. So just really looking for some discussion on the ideas on that. If you guys have any feedback, what do you think?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of combining all of those into one, area for us to keep an eye on. I think it's, that's the area that we have responsibility for. It's not like it's going to be, it's not such a large area, and we're not talking about so many people that we can't keep track of it that way. It consolidates things. I would hope and think it would make it easier for accounting of it, and I'd be in favor of that.
I'm in favor as well. Would it be in future budget years that the city clerk would propose their budget and still have it that way, then at the end of it be a consolidated package, basically? Is that your thought?
Yeah. So as a department head, so to speak, she would still put together what she believes her appropriate budget is. Ultimately, just like it is now, it would be the council's ultimate decision on what to approve for any budget. There would be, as opposed to the way it happens now with her budget, of there being nobody looking at it until it goes to the larger council, those items would all be combined into one package for us to look at, and then be sent to the finance department for inclusion in the larger budget.
When you say us, you mean Audit Finance?
Audit and Finance Committee. Yeah, by us, I mean the Audit and Finance Committee. So in other words, still our council assistant would likely work on putting the numbers together for the budget. Audit and Finance Committee would take a look at those specific numbers, give approval. Final council then would still approve the budget just like we do every other year. It would just be that we would then be taking some ownership of the council portions of the budget as other department heads do
Ahead of time.
ahead of time.
Yeah.
At least so we're not, in other words, there'd be some oversight that frankly has never been there before. And somewhat recently, there's been some overruns in some related areas, and I think this would be a good start to making sure we don't run into that again. So,
Is there any way to, I'm assuming it's too late to do that for the upcoming budget fiscal year.
We're working on.
You're working on that?
So what we have come up with is taking all of the funds or orgs together and creating a project code for just the clerk's office. So you'll have the three in one, and then it'll be the same org with a clerk project. So it would be split out so you could see exactly what the clerk's office has. But overall, you could do a total of all of them at one time. Yeah, we can still do that.
Yeah, I like that.
like that. Well, good. And certainly, Mr. Fierce has the most budgeting experience of the three of us up here. So if you have any questions,
I like it in spite of it was your idea.
well, I get the big picture stuff anyway, but I appreciate that. So, Ms. Gray, continue on with the work then of combining the budgets. And I think the process we'll use is the council assistant, for now Kim Osborne, will continue to work on the documents. And then, so early in the process, certainly for next year, we'll bring it early to Audit Finance for review and approval, then preliminary approval, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So,
We can do that.
thank you. I
Well-
appreciate that. Okay. Next item, we've got your monthly financial presentation, looks like.
So the month of March is officially the, let me find my work here, 75% of the full year. So in looking at all the general fund, we are actually doing better than what we had originally projected, so that's good. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of D and E together. So for the general fund. So the forecast, what we have forecasted is what we also presented, or Zach presented a couple weeks ago. As we go through the numbers, we're, refining each month as we add the data and keep moving on. So in looking at the general fund, a couple notes on the general fund. Overall on revenues, we're up 3%. Based on a 3/4 year calculation. And we are spot on with expenditures. So that's actually a good thing. And so overall right now, for the month of March, we're at almost a $2.2 million in the black which is better than what we have been. So with that in mind, what we projected for the year end amount to be will actually, we will drop to excess revenue over expenditures to be at 1.33. So we'll drop a little bit between now and then because a lot of things haven't been done, just, purchases and things haven't been made yet. So feeling much better about that, but still we're on that path. So we are tightening things up and really trying to make sure that we don't continue down that slope for the next couple of years. The other thing, which I think is actually exciting, is the use tax has hit its waterfall. in the month of March. So what that means, the police have hit their cap and the animal shelter has hit their cap. And so we actually were able to filter out to the rest of the departments or funds. And which is, I think, for hitting in March, we're hitting it a month earlier than we did last year. So that's really nice. Cigarette tax is still an issue. We're at only 57%, so that still seems to not be hitting the mark that we would hope to see.
Do you have any idea as to why that is?
Cigarette tax, other than people not buying cigarettes.
I mean, I guess I was wondering, I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't some mechanism that we were missing relative to, receiving what should have been collected or something to that effect. You don't feel like that's the case anymore?
I don't, no.
Okay, all right. Well,
We've seen it on the decline.
I mean, it's a good thing that people aren't smoking on one hand, on the other hand, and that does impact us. So, just observation.
Also, just a couple notes, the city clerk's office is over budget, but that is due to the extra elections, so that makes it go over. The finance portion is over budget in the general fund, and that's due to Motorola. We pay it at the very beginning of our fiscal year for the whole year, so each month it gets less and less. And then fire is at an 81.25%, and that's mainly due to overtime and minimum staffing expenditures. But overall, the general fund is at least exceeding what we had predicted.
Do you, before we move on, do you have what number of fires projected to hit for the whole year on there?
Yes. We have fire is to hit 25 million, and we budgeted 23.6.
So 100 and
So about
some percent.
1.4 million higher than what?
Okay.
That primarily be overtime.
Yes. And then, let's see. That's pretty much all for the general fund as far as going forward. So we were very happy with that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Gray, so as Kansas City has become a little bit more of a higher profile area in the region, in the nation, bringing in some bigger events, NFL draft obviously come to mind, are we able to maybe note if there's an uptick in tax revenue because people are coming in?
We could
Is it
maybe
even
through the
worth doing,
transient
I guess,
guest
is the
tax.
ask? Is it worth doing something like that? Maybe trying to, so we can look back next year and look back to see why did we have an uptick here? Maybe
Yeah.
have a note that there was a convention or something
I think
around
we
it.
definitely could do some tracking going forward on some of the major events, and then compare it to I think the transient guest tax would probably be a good one for people, staying. And also we could look at sales tax too. Just remember that sales tax doesn't. We don't get it the month after; it's 2 months after. So we kind of have to keep that in mind too. So we won't know for about 2 months after the event if it had any impact.
Well, if you think it's worthy, to do so you can have some historical records, that would be good. Then my other question would be, because the overtime has been such a high dollar amount, do we have any significant cost savings coming from municipal services, street maintenance, through snow removal? So we have a semi-light year, I guess. Is there any cost savings there?
I haven't really looked at the snow removal by itself.
Sure.
But I can definitely we'll mark that down and take a look at that. Just to kind of see where, over the past few years, how much was actually spent on snow removal.
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome. All of the other funds are performing slightly above what we've projected. So I'm not seeing, on what we budgeted for this year, we're meeting it or surpassing it. So I find that to be very positive.
Real quick, because I know we got a few more things to get through, but Mr. Walker mentioned I think in a council meeting, we're going to switch the way we budget
Yes.
at some point. Can you give a elevator pitch on that?
So it's called priority-based budgeting. And basically what it will do is, instead of going line by line, how we look here, we go more by priorities, and which council sets the priorities for us to follow. And so what we'll do is then we set those priorities up, and we have a program for this, and we set those priorities up, and then as we get expenditures, personnel, everything will be coded by those projects. And then that way we can show, this is what you asked us for, this is what we spent on that. So that you can see that, and the public can see that we're doing things that are high priority. So many projects will be on this list, and they are scored, whether they're high priority, low priority, if they're moderate priority on a for the city, depending on what your action plan wants us to go towards. So, and then it'll get plotted, and then that's when we determine what projects do we really work on first. There could be something that's in low priority. Doesn't mean that you have to eliminate that program. It just means maybe we find other resources to fill that spot. So it's not something that, because you're in low priority, we're just going to axe that program. It's more on how do we find another alternative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. That's the look you saw on my face was thinking about how that can be used also internally to sort of break the cycle of automatically budgeting all the things that just appear on a budget line.
So we started working a little bit on with a couple departments to really kind of start practicing with it, start getting people used to thinking a little bit differently. So we're hoping for the next budget season, the 24-25, we'll be more full-blown into this. So it's had good success.
Is this the progressive budgeting method that organizations use now? Is this
It's becoming more and more adopted. I know Kansas City is looking at it, has been trying to get into that. I know we have, I was trying to think of who the other one was that we used that was around here, that Springfield might be on it too. I think they were on the list. But yes, I would say it's more of a progressive.
good? Well, we need to be trailblazers. It's about time. I like it.
Mr. Chairman,
Go
just a question in that regard. So does that mean we'll be seeing a budget that, I'm getting anxious to see the budget, so. Does that mean we'll be seeing a budget that has priorities as well as departments, or will the departments be within the priorities, or, I'm just trying to envision what
It'll be a separate report.
would be a separate report.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you'll have your normal budget by line item, but you will also see a report that's based on the programs that we're funding.
That's what I assumed. I just wanted to get a better sense for that, so, okay.
I think I'm also the next item.
Yes, you sure are. Yeah. 22-23 budget forecast.
Well, I kind of already gave you a little bit of I did the general fund, and I knew that was more of the highest priority, so I really worked on it. And again, right now we're exceeding our budget. The the forecast is going to drop just a little bit, just a little bit, just because at the end of the year you have some things that tend to only come at the end of the year. So
You were talking about the timekeeping update. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Okay. Which is exciting news.
Yes.
Goodness.
So
Yes.
we have actually we received the contract, and of course legal has taken a look at it, and we have actually signed the contract. So we are started, and Ceridian is the selected vendor, and so timeline. The first 3 months are getting the project charter completed, the data requirements, configuring the system, and testing. And so we are right now at the very initial, we haven't had our initial kickoff yet. That will be coming very soon. And then we'll be starting to plan how it's all going to lay out. And then all the training and rules will start being developed. So that will take probably 2 to 3 months, just that piece, because it's so complex. The goal is to go live January 1st. But as you all know, things will crop in. But Holly is amazing at payroll, and she has done several implementations before. And we have some really good staff that are going to be assisting her. So I think we're going to have a very successful one. And again, if we are not ready, we are not going live January 1st.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And, you know, the horror stories of all the digital things in this city will be brought up to us over the next year in an effort to stall this work. Couple of questions. One, Holly does payroll and she'll be working on this. Is there somebody else that also is cross-trained? Do we have multiple people? There used to be only one person that knew how to do all of these things.
We have Holly and Katrina. Both are managing the payroll. I actually know how to run the payroll as well. So there's 3 of us that
Good.
are very good at it. We are working on a 4th person, and potentially maybe our budget analyst may start to help as well, to do, putting in things that rules in, or just adding data, things that take time. We're just pulling in some individuals that are great at doing that type of thing.
I'd appreciate that. One of the common complaints has been, oh no, this person left, now everything stops. So hopefully you'll put an end to that objection.
Well, I think we're doing better at that right now in all of finance and HR. So I think we're getting more cross-trained. So it's been really good.
Thank you very much for that. And thank you also very much for all this effort. I can't even believe that we're approaching the end of all this digitalization. That's just fantastic. Mr. Walker, I have a request from you. If and I don't want to put this responsibility on Ms. Gray. If you get any legitimate kickback from any certain departments or issues of people, any serious reluctance to implement any of this digital timekeeping, let me ask it this way. Will you inform council of that fact, or at least this committee? Will you agree to that?
Well, I think, if we run into issues that are presenting resistance that we need the council's assistance on, or this committee, certainly know we've got that collaborative relationship to do so. I think our organization's ready for this. I think we're beyond excited to be moving this direction. But if we do hit any of that turbulence and we need that assistance, I'll certainly make use of that supportive relationship.
I appreciate that. It has been made clear, certainly over the years in this committee and during these meetings, that we are dying for this to start. So thank you again so very much.
And Ron Luce is now officially out of the picture. So it's now officially ours.
Well, that's a beautiful thing and also very sad because God bless Ron. We'll bring him back in 2027 for the bicentennial. We'll have him come back and visit Santa Calagon.
I'm sure he would love that.
He would. He needs the vacation here. Not everything's better in the Pacific Northwest. So, gentlemen, Ms. Gray, any new business that you have? Yes, sir.
So we've been asked a couple of times by one of our colleagues to investigate further into Falls of Crackerneck TIF. And I think, that's a prudent request, and I think it's worthwhile to, go ahead and ask the city manager to move forward in evaluating any possibilities we have in that regard. I'm not sure there are any, but if there are, then we're probably running out of time to capitalize on that. So I think we just need to find out if there are any possibilities, ways to remedy that situation, any at all.
Sure thing. And, as a committee, we've supported that effort recently in the recent past. And Mr. Walker and I, since Mr. Green has left, we've spoken about the matter a number of times. And
do we need a motion or something to instruct city manager to move forward and obtain outside counsel or somebody to analyze that further for us, or what's our next step in there?
Oh, we can do that. Sure. Is that a motion? The motion would be to instruct the city manager to seek an outside opinion, counsel, CPA, something, the appropriate person.
I would second that.
Okay, motion carries. Mr. Walker, you've got your marching orders.
Yeah, understood.
Thank you. And I think that's a good suggestion and good motion, Mr. Fears, or Councilmember Fears. Thank you very much. Anything from your side, Ms. Gray? Sure appreciate it. Well, with that in mind, Councilmember Perkins?
Nothing tonight.
Okay. Councilmember Fears. All right, 3:56, we're adjourned. Thanks all.
Less than that, we're very good.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Yep. Good job.
Sure appreciate it.
You gave us this by PDF. You need this
I'm gonna keep mine just for
to do anything good for you? It just takes up space.
They did. I made it. They did leave. I made them sit there, but our early stuff.
And I will. I'll do a little bit of pile and you know, I just want to be sure. Last time you still got
This conversation. Interest rate.